Because I've told everybody I'm doing 0 extensions this year, and that next year I'm cutting my clientele by a quarter. Because I can't do full-time and tax time.
I thought you enjoyed all us guys that do extensions, so you can spread it out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure Mark does. I only like working 2 jobs for 10 weeks, that's all I commit to.
Well, we've got 4 of us here, so we could go ahead, right? Well, let's wait a couple minutes. It's not quite 6. So. Do you know Karen Danielson? That's going to be our new commissioner.
Oh, wow.
She's from down the west side.
Down in Anderson? Or?
I think so.
Oh, okay. I might know her if when I see her, but
Yeah.
doesn't ring a bell. That's probably good to have somebody
Oh, I
down
think
there
so.
in Anderson.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to start in 1 minute.
I think I saw Renee pulling in.
She'll come running in right at 6. Yeah, you gotta get your cookie.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of eating tonight. I'm thinking of eating tonight here.
No, somebody else comes, we'll sign it, huh? I'm gonna go ahead, is that okay? Mike? Okay. I'd like to welcome you to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for March 28th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded, and we're going to begin our meeting this evening with an opening prayer from Commissioner Marchbanks, and then a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Showers.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee, beginning of this Planning Commission meeting. We give thee thanks for our many blessings and for the opportunities we have living in a free country and in a beautiful city. Father in heaven, we pray that thou would bless us in our endeavors tonight to carry out the business that the Planning Commission has to take care of tonight, and that we will serve our citizenry in the best way possible. Again, we thank thee and say these things humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to begin with an audible roll call of the commissioners. Sharon Call, here. Mike Marchbanks.
Here.
Jared Showers.
Here.
Rob Callis. Hasn't arrived yet, at least. Stephen Johnson.
Here.
Scott Thompson.
Here.
And Renee Tribe. She's coming in.
She was on her way.
Okay. Uh-oh.
What did you do?
Just down really hard skiing.
Oh.
Tore my ACL, tore my MCL.
Oh.
I got a package of injuries, gang. Here I am.
Well, you are good to be here with us tonight.
This is my last meeting, team.
I know.
All just rolling right into place.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
You're the best. Thank you.
Mm.
Good man. Thank you.
Hand that down to Scott.
That's too bad.
Hand that down to
Totally.
Scott. You don't need to send the envelope. Just-
You get your knees replaced like me and you don't have an ACL or a PCL.
Oh, is that how it
anymore.
works?
Yeah, so
I'm going for the
I
bionic
can't tear
option.
them up anymore.
Okay. Item number 2 on our agenda, this is the approval of the minutes, and this would be, excuse me. This would be the minutes for March 14th, 2023. And commissioners have received the minutes ahead of time and had a chance to approve those.
The only
Are there
thing
any
that I
corrections?
noticed is on the motions that Commissioner Callis was not listed. I think he was here and he voted, but I think that just as Kathy was copying and pasting, he didn't get listed as a vote.
Oh, thank you, because I didn't notice that.
But other than that, they looked good. I just-
Okay, and Brittany, you've made a note of that? Okay. With that change, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, item number 3, this would be a time for public comment. This would be for any items that are not already on the agenda for this evening. And since you're the only public here, appreciate our city attorney being here with us also, Brian, and thank you for being here with us. The first item on our agenda, item number 4, this is a clarification of the site plan approval. This is for Colt's Neck or fence specialist. And our applicant is Tim Clyde. And if you want to come up, you can, so others can hear you at the microphone.
Sure.
And our presenting staff is Mike Florence.
All right, thank you, commissioners. It's great to be here with you this evening. So Mr. Clyde and his business received site plan approval from the Planning Commission on December 13th, 2022. Tonight, what you're hearing is a clarification on the fencing for what's required along 400 North. And so I'm going to go through that real quick. This is the site plan that was submitted by Mr. Clyde when you reviewed that. Unfortunately, it just says install fence 15 feet behind the property. That's actually supposed to be 20, which has been corrected. But there wasn't any additional detail on that. And so we, as staff, we didn't call that out. We didn't address it at the Planning Commission. It's just an oversight. And so since that time, city staff and Mr. Clyde have talked about what those requirements are. As we have reviewed the city code, the city staff feels like the wall requirements as part of the ordinance in 1748-040 is required. And what it says is a masonry or concrete fence 7 feet high shall be constructed and maintained along any property line between a non-residential development and a residential use or a residential zone. And so if you look at this, the map here, the zoning map. So the residential zone extends up to the property line of where the property you gave site plan approval for last time. And so that's the requirement that it be up to a residential zone. And even though the fence has to be set back 20 feet because of the landscaping requirement, that doesn't relieve the applicant of still putting in the masonry wall or concrete wall, is the way staff interprets that. Now, the ordinance also does say that the Planning Commission can approve alternative materials. Let me go back to that ordinance. It says, let's see. Maybe I didn't include that section of the ordinance.
Yep.
Oh, right
You have
there,
the full
sorry, the
ordinance.
last sentence.
Yeah.
In all commercial zones, the planning commission may approve a landscaping screen in lieu of a fence other than a masonry fence, or approve a fence height greater than 8 feet if it makes the following findings, and you'll see those 3 findings there. The other ordinance that is in play is 17.48050. So what this is, it's about screening outdoor storage with when a commercial business has an outdoor to storage area. And so that ordinance says that it needs to be a site obscuring fence. So if you take those 2 ordinances together, city staff feels like that masonry wall is a requirement unless the planning commission approves something different. And so that's what's before you this evening. In your staff report, we have provided you some materials, and looks like Mr. Clyde has some additional materials to provide you as well. Here's the photo provided by Mr. Clyde. He would like to install the black chain link with black privacy slats, and then we gave you some information on the guidebook or fence material book that was provided by Mr. Clyde. And so with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have regarding the ordinances or the requirements as they stand in that commercial corridor zone.
Do you have some additional comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I've got a lot, but it's just, I guess if you have any questions for Mike, and then I'll take over, but.
Anyone have questions for Mike?
No.
Would you like to go ahead?
Is this pick up very well, like this mic? Do I need to get close to it, or are we good?
I mean, you gotta be,
It's on, isn't it?
It's on.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about this specifically. I know that I had mentioned when I was here before that I've spent the last 4 years on the Planning Commission over in Pleasant Grove, and I've gone to a lot of Planning Commission trainings and stuff like that to truly understand what the real nature is of the Planning Commission and how city codes actually work and the entire process of this. So we have 2 different issues that we're talking about here. Number 1 is the code that is the 17.48050. Mike, will you go back to that really quick for me? Or excuse me, the 4040. Okay, the first one. And this has to do with the mason area that's going to separate between 2 different places. And if you get very specific, there are codes in every city, and we dealt with this a lot, sometimes in Pleasant Grove, where a code might not have something specific or it becomes outdated. We've had some issues with just like home-based businesses and Amazon delivering all the time and how often they should be in the neighborhood, right? And so some things need to be updated, but this is very specific, and what you're trying to have within codes is something very specific so you can stay within it. So I want you to go to the very top sentence there, where it says that this masonry concrete fence should be constructed along any property line. Now, the reason that it states a property line is because that is an actual data point of a specific spot, okay? That's not referencing a setback, that's not referencing anything else, but a property line that is between 2 different between the residential and general commercial, which is the section that we're in, which is the 17, okay? So that property line is what I have on the east between Betty Clark's property, okay? And that is in the site plan, is very specific that it's gonna be in there. Now, it is hard to find this particular situation in the city. There are 2 particular situations that have come before here that have been built and are done. And Mike, is there a possibility, I have pictures if we want, but if you can pull up Google Maps for me really quick. This is, I made like 3 copies. Just some photos that I have. I wanna make sure that I don't have these mixed up. One is this is 550 North, over there behind Walmart. You have residential that is right across the street from commercial. You guys can pass this So right along that road is commercial, and I remember when Walmart was coming through the city, you can kind of zoom down there where it turns at a 575 North. There's 3 residential houses, and so the pictures that I have taken there are right on 500 North. You have some trees. It looks like a few of them have died, and there's 2 residential houses right across the street. Perfect. Right there, you see where the 2-rail fence is? According to the interpretation of what they're talking about here is that that 2-rail fence should not exist. There should be a 7-foot masonry wall, okay? Which is not true because the property line, when you come to a street, becomes the city property, not a residential. That's why it's specifically between those 2 properties, between residential and commercial. Even though the overlay of the zoning goes across the street, that's still, the road is not where you're gonna build something, right? So if you turn a little bit further, Mike, to the left on the screen, you can see down there, and that's what the picture I've taken, when you get to that house down there, that is where the masonry wall starts, because that is the adjacent property, okay? The other place that is within the city, and you can drive down there, I kind of took or pull down there a little bit, Mike, if you want, but I took, in those pictures that I have it down there showing their masonry fence is kind of falling apart a little bit on the end, but that's where it ends, right there. It doesn't continue down that commercial property. The second place is if you go to 600 North, Mike, it's on the east side of State Street next to Low Book Cells. And then there's a couple of businesses that are down along there. All along that side, if you're interpreting this code the same way, is that you should be on a setback all along Low Book Cells, all along those commercial properties. And this is the next 3. There's obviously nothing there until you get to the very east side of the property, which is where the masonry fence is at. Exactly like what a setback is. A setback, if you're not 100% familiar, setbacks are usually for a build envelope, for where a building can be constructed. That is a separate data point, and that data point is coming off of what is considered the property line. So if you go to this specific zone, it says any development on the property line between GC, which is what we're in, which is in the code 17, to residential property. So even though the staff believes that means that it needs to be out on 400 North, that's not how your code is written. It's not, this isn't, in my opinion, this is not up to an interpretation of that because it's very specific on the actual point. And these are 2 other examples within the city that this exact same situation came across. There's 9 homes across the street. If that was the case, Low Book Cells and those other 2 buildings should have had a 7-foot masonry wall all along that. And I remember when Low Book Cells, I was actually in these meetings when Low Book Cells came in to build their building and Walmart. The citizens came to this, and it's been years, I'm sure it's in the minutes. The main concerns that they actually had were lighting. You know, because you're gonna have those parking lots lit. They were worried about Walmart with the lighting. They were also worried about delivery trucks coming at night because they ended up on the Walmart, they cut off 600, I guess that's 600 North, that dead-ended back there, and they made a turnaround on the back end of Walmart. There was some, there's a residential property back behind there is where that's at. But that's the exact same example. So to me, I feel like with our original site plan, doing the masonry wall between me and Betty Clark on the east side is appropriate. The reality is, even where Steve Johnson's building is, he is partially across the street from Betty Clark's residential, which if this was interpreted the same way, then you would have needed to turn that fence and run it till your entrance into your parking lot, which would have been another 10, 15, 20 feet maybe. So it here still comes back to, it's very specific that this is along a property line. Property line is a property line. That's a data point. It's not a setback. A setback is for a totally different reason, and that setback is determined based off the property line. Those are specific data points, okay? So now if we go to the second part in the staff report, which is 1748050, which is now specifically what we're talking about is storage of materials, okay? And you can see this everywhere. This might be something that you guys might want to look at in the future, or the city council might want to look at this, or something like that, because of what it says specifically. If you look in the very first sentence, second line on that, it says that the enclosed with a site obscuring fence of at least 6 feet high for storage. It doesn't specify the kind of fence, what it is, how it's supposed to be done. It just says it can be that, or it can be in lieu of, you can do some sort of landscape buffering between the two, right? But it's a site obscuring. So that basically just means it needs to block the view. So what I propose, and I agree, as Mike and I had these discussions, he talked about that there's chain link with slats. Now, I own a fencing company. Obviously, I understand the products. There are a lot of different kinds of slats that go into chain link. And there's a lot that are kind of almost a semi-privacy kind of a slat. They call them tube slats. I actually brought some samples of it. I gave Mike the brochure. If you want to scroll down a little bit, we'll go over this. Okay, so perfect. Thank you, Mike. So see on the kind of our right side on the screen, see that approximate 75% bottom locking slat and the easy slat? It's white on the right-hand side. It's called a tube slat, which is what this is. This is bottom locking. This actually gets installed after the fence is actually up, but it will only block 75%. In my opinion, and I agree with the city, is that that's not site obscuring. You can literally see right through those tube slats. And there's actually even a picture of this on this other side. And this is not what I'm proposing, but I think this is what gets caught up when anybody actually talks about chain link with slats in it. And that's why I always hesitate on this particular product. Now, Mike, if you'll scroll up back where you're talking about the proposal. So those two fences are the same. I brought a sample of this so you can kind of see. In my mind, what we really want to happen is we want the fence to disappear and you just kind of see the landscaping. So this is what I reference as black on black. And what that means is this is a black slat. This is pre-woven into the fabric to make it tighter. You can't slide these in after. The black on black means the wire is black, okay? You can do these in myriad colors. They can also do them where the chain link is still galvanized. And this they consider to be, one of them is a 98, one of them is a 99%. And the reason why, and I'll hand this to you guys, is if you're at a slight angle, you can slightly see through, so they can't claim that it's like 100%. But this is site obscuring, which is what goes back to the code. This is what I want to put up there so that it disappears. So as I put the bushes and the trees and the plants along there, then that will disappear. And because I'm a little sensitive about it, planning on running a mow strip underneath the fence too, so I don't get any weeds or crap that grow up underneath that fence. So in my opinion, I guess maybe not even my opinion, your code in 174850, which is talking about hiding our merchandise, which is what this fence is actually for, is to be site obscuring. Now, what I was planning on doing there is running 8 feet tall, not 6. 2 reasons. One, so that we can bring the material down below that 8 feet. The second thing is because of the elevation of 400 North, as you go up the hill there, it will end up hiding a few more things as you come down the hill. I can't totally block as you come down to that 4-way stop now, which freaks me out every time I drive by. I almost blow through it every time. 30 years of driving up that road. And the other reason why is I need 20-foot gates and to be able to drive through there. And I can't build a gate, obviously, out of stone, concrete, or any kind of masonry. So they've got to be some sort of a chain link roll gate anyway, which we would be putting this product on. So you would have 2 20-foot gates in a 250-foot section that would be this black product next to something else. And we're kind of wanting us to just more disappear along 400 North. And so I felt like, as I had discussed with Mike, I felt like that actually follows the code, which says site obscuring at least 6 feet tall, and that I actually didn't need to come back in front of you. Mike felt like that you guys needed to hear what we were trying to do and follow that along those lines. I agree with this, as far as the original thought of chain link with slats will probably freak people out, but this is a little bit different product. You know, I think that if you want to be specific about fences or a fence or the side obscuring aspect of this, you need to put it in the code. Because your code only says obscuring, which means, in my mind, I could go take anything and put it up there as long as it blocked the view, right? Now, I understand as you read through the code, we're trying to keep some integrity of it. We're trying to be sensitive to, you know, the look and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at some examples of that's happened, Millhaven just put a chain link fence up and they ran the mesh, they ran like it's like a privacy screening. It's what you see around tennis courts, or you'll see it around construction sites. That's what they did on their stuff to hide their trucks. But I think this looks a lot nicer and a lot better, but that technically, I guess, passes the code, right? So that is kind of, I guess, where I'm at. This is what I want to put in, and these are the last little things that we need to work out. I'm ready to actually start the storm drain. I've got it lined up with the contractor, and I'm ready to put this fence in. I wanted to put it in about a month ago, but we kind of got held up on this particular situation. So that's all I got at the moment, unless you have any questions for me specifically.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Couple clarifications. This isn't the only thing holding up getting going on
Well,
the
there's just a few
project.
little things.
So, quite a few big things with the bond and things like that.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to pay the bond until I had it cleared.
So, couple distinctions I just want to make. Loba, you know, the place behind Walmart, it's not constructed yet. We don't know what's going there. The place next to Lobuk Cells, it's, you know, those are commercial office buildings. The distinction here we're dealing with is a storage yard. If you look at any of the, let's go to Google Maps here.
Mike, that's correct.
I mean,
then-
if
then
you
that's in the
look
code.
at, this is what we're trying to cover. If you look at the existing storage yard, and you look at the area, this is what we're trying to protect the community so that you have an appeasing look, you meet the, you know, we're going through a general plan amendment. This 400 North corridor, or this node right here is important. We're coming up with new commercial design standards for this node as well. You know, every planning commission meeting is brought up about the way that 400 North looks. And so we hear that from the planning commission all the time. Let's see.
Mike,
Yeah,
I have
and-
one question
yes.
too. As far as the way the planning commission has interpreted a site obscuring fence, that has always been the concrete fence. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I believe. Since I've been here, you haven't approved anything besides a concrete or masonry fence.
For, as far as that interpretation
For
of a
when it's
site
next to
obscuring
residential or other areas, yes.
Okay, we're confusing two different codes, though.
What do you mean?
fence. Okay, let's
The
let
re-
Mike
the-
finish. Excuse me.
Oh,
All right,
that's fine.
Mike, go ahead.
We're applying the two codes in the commercial zone that are before you. And so that's what, you know, that's what we had up there. We can go to those again. But those are the two codes that we're applying and this evening.
Discussion with the commission?
Yeah, I have a few points. I mean, I look in the reading of this. There's some other things that stand out at me that should make sense. It says the planning commission and 040 says we may approve this if it meets the following findings. And it's not any one finding, all three findings have to be there. And one of them, it says, the proposed fence landscape screen will shield the residents' use from noise, traffic, or other characteristics. And it goes on down further, it says, upon these finding that the fence is not needed to project the adjacent residual uses from the adverse effects, then we can mitigate it. This isn't gonna stop noise like a concrete wall is. If we're talking noise, which is clearly mentioned in here as noise, a concrete wall is gonna be a better buffer against noise than this particular style of fence would be. And then if you go down to 050, where it says, where it talks about the site obscuring fence, you notice here, this says the storage of merchandise outside of an approved building. This doesn't say outside of an approved building abutting residential. So this is referring to possibly down in the anywhere down in the commercial zone. If you want to put a storage yard, you have to have a site obscuring fence. I don't believe that this exemption here, this site obscuring fence, applies to residential abutting commercial, as in this situation. And then as far as, I would go as far as to say, the Walmart, that is a very unique situation there, but when I looked at that, my first impression was it's not developed, which you mentioned, so we don't know what's gonna go on there. And unfortunately, for me, I've only been on the planning commission now for 4 years. And what I truly try to avoid is, well, look at this, look at this, look at this. I wasn't here on the planning commission back when they did those, but I don't wanna be making an exception or deviate from what our normal course, so that 2 years from now, somebody comes to me and says, well, look at Colt Neck fencing. Theirs is different, therefore I don't need it either. So I think we, as a commission, we need to be consistent. I don't believe that the site obscuring fence applies to residential abutting commercial. I think we have a great responsibility to screen the neighbors from adverse impacts such as noise, which is specifically mentioned.
I don't know, I know there's a lot of feelings with the neighbors as far as, and others on 400 North, is how this has appeared for a long time. And also it is one of the major corridors of the city. And I think both of those things contribute to my interpretation of the code also.
Which is what? Because we're talking about two different things here.
Well,
We're talking
a
about two
site
different codes.
obscuring fence, we have always interpreted that to be a solid surface concrete fence. Anytime that is commercial next to residential. We have always interpreted it that way. And so
Okay,
to
so
start changing that, to me, isn't fair to other businesses that we've interpreted that way.
okay, so
And now if we need to make that code so it's, can't be misinterpreted, then we could look at that. But as far as how we've interpreted that, and I would ask Brian about that too, as far as that code interpretation.
Well, I think that in the staff report it points out, we acknowledge, Tim points out, there's not a specific definition. But we do have other places where our code has interpreted exactly what site obscuring means.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
The council has, the commission has had a history of consistent interpretation of what site obscuring means, as it deals with these types of uses. So I feel fairly confident, I feel very confident that the interpretation that chain link with slats does not, even if these are better, there's no doubt, they're better than what I got at my house. They're definitely better. But that's been our interpretation. I feel very confident in defending that. Also, I feel very confident that if we say, okay, we find this meets the definition of site obscuring, then we have to approve it anywhere else in the city too.
That's my concern.
Unless we come in and specifically change the code. But I think that, and I think Tim makes a legitimate good faith argument. I don't think he's pulling stuff out of thin air here.
No.
But I think that our interpretation of the code, the way we have interpreted and applied it, is reasonable and prudent and defensible. And so, but if we do decide, I think you have the discretion under the code section cited to say this will work here. I think you have that discretion. But if you do, then then I think we need to be prepared to apply that same, we're setting a precedent.
How long has that been on the market, that newer type of slat?
No, 15 years.
15 years?
Yeah, there's specific places. There's BMW dealerships in Oregon. That's the only thing they have because we sell it to them.
And you
It's
sell
the
it
only,
to?
it's the only thing that they're required to put in. I struggle in just one aspect that I think we're bouncing from one code to the next and we're using them simultaneously. And that just isn't how this is supposed to be done.
Can I
Yeah,
say a couple things here?
yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time reconciling the two codes together, and I think this is a storage yard, and so I'm focusing more on .50, than .040. And maybe I'll use the example of my building, I don't have to put a fence in front of my building. So I don't know that, I agree, between commercial and residential, if it's facing, I think it's more that it's a storage yard that we're dealing with.
Can I just add, this is a unique circumstance. It's not often we get storage yards.
On a major road,
residential.
yeah.
So it is a unique situation.
It is a unique situation.
And I don't think we're at liberty to disregard all code sections that apply, that touch on this situation.
But Brian,
Okay.
040 says specifically along the property line. This is not along the property line. This is not adjacent to as a property line. There's a city road that's 40 feet wide, and I have a 20-foot setback, that I have a building that's almost 200 feet away. Like it's like we want to cherry pick one aspect of the code, and then we want to apply 040 to 050, and then we want to take 050 and take a cherry pick piece of that and put it back to 404.
I think
040.
what we're doing is we're saying, look, there's clearly gonna be a fence, Tim, no question.
Correct.
We
But-
all agree on that.
But I feel like you're trying to apply 040 on a setback on 400 North, which is the storage yard fence, which is 050. I have no argument with this 040. That is the east
Okay.
property line. It says along any property line.
Okay,
The property line is on that north. I'm not on the property line adjacent to a residential property across the street,
I think, I'll concede that.
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So I'm 20
So-
feet back.
so if I
So
could-
then I think if we are done with 404, then we talk about 505. And then if you're gonna talk to me about the fact, because I've installed them, you have chain link fence with slats in storage yards everywhere in this city. Everywhere in this city.
That
If
face
you wanna,
directly to residential.
no, because this is the storage yard, so this doesn't have to do with what's residential, because that's 404. If we're in 505, we are literally talking about storage yards, right? It's not on a property line, it can be anywhere within my property. It's no different than what Sterling's, I think, is now. It used to be Hans. He's got a chain link fence up there to put tires behind it and cars behind it. It's no different than when if I drive over to where, if you go straight out from, 1600 North and go out into all those commercial buildings, all those storage yards are not concrete fences. They are chain link fences.
And Mary just pointed out a really good fact, I need to give her an honorary law degree. But you look at the second line in point,
Just-
040.
Okay?
And it says maintain along a property line. Now, I get the property line, but between a residential use or a residential zone. So the fact that you're butting up against city property, that zone comes across and abuts your property. And so you are abutting.
Okay, then I have a 20-foot setback, Brian. I'm not on the property line, which you go right back to the sentence before, right? So I'm just saying that this goes back
Let's let our
to,
city attorney go
but this
ahead,
goes
please.
back to a storage thing of 050, right?
I think we have done a very good job. I think Tim's done a very good job of articulating his position. I think staff has done a good job of articulating their position. And now I know some of the commissioners have some comments or some thoughts, and so I think we need to.
Go ahead, Steve.
So in my mind, and I can be persuaded both ways as we talk as a commission, I'm focusing on .050. And I think our biggest challenge here with this is it does say a site obscuring fence. And so our challenge is that chain link, in our definition, site obscuring. As a classic example, yes, maybe concrete has been for a lot of places, but between my office building and Tim's property, it's a vinyl 8-foot fence. And at the time, that was between commercial and residential. His property was residential, my property was commercial. And at the time, we said we really don't, he didn't want a concrete fence, we didn't want a concrete fence, we put a vinyl fence. And that was approved by everybody and went through. So I don't think there's long-standing that it has to be a concrete fence. To me, the question would be, is a chain link with slats, is that, I mean, we could technically say that's not site obscuring if we wanted to, because I can see through it a little bit. On the other hand, I think if Tim wanted to put a vinyl fence, that would be site obscuring. That's just kind of my opinion, and I think that's more where I'm focusing is on that definition in 050, what is site obscuring? Because as we make this decision, right, we're gonna make that decision for the whole city, is what is our definition of site obscuring, something you can not see through. And so, that's just kind of my thought on that. Yes, when a lot of times when we look at the between residential and commercial on the property line, we are worried about noise, and we're worried about those things, and that's why in the code we specifically said a concrete fence. I'm not convinced myself yet that that necessarily applies to this, but on the storage yard, I do think it needs to be site obscuring. And I haven't made up my mind whether that's a site obscuring or not. But that's, to me, that's the issue that we're debating here, more than trying to debate whether it should be a concrete fence. That's my opinion.
I think in 050, if you guys want it to be a specific fence, you need to list it, and you don't.
That may be true, but our previous interpretation on all other properties with a site obscuring fence is the concrete fence.
I personally don't feel that 050 is the most applicable section. 040 is the most applicable section. It's residential, budding commercial, the commercial zone. That's the one that is gonna set the standard, because this 050, that's the standard for any storage yard anywhere in the city. I think 040 is the one that I focus more on to make my decision, not 050, because it has to be, 040 has to be met before we even figure out whether it's a storage yard, in my opinion.
So it's not a storage yard for any part of the city because we're only in the general commercial zone section of your code. That's why we're in 17.
For all of State Street, planned commercial, I mean, this applies to a lot of zones in the city. It doesn't apply to your light industrial zone, Mr. Clyde's correct. But for your commercial zones, this is the requirement.
So am I misinterpreting what I'm saying?
Well,
Not totally, no.
no, it applies to a significant portion of the city.
Okay.
I think your interpretation is consistent with staff's interpretation.
Okay.
Mike, what's your thoughts on it? And Jared?
I was, if I recall, there was quite a few people here that came last time you were
Yeah.
here, and there was some emotion showing.
That goes
and-
20 years.
And,
Yeah.
and some things boiling over and whatnot. If I were a business owner in your situation and perhaps trying to settle some of that history, I would want to do everything I could do to appease the neighbors. Now, I'm not suggesting that we let the neighbors dictate what we do as a city. I mean, we have codes and ordinances and things like that for a reason. But if you put this fence in with the privacy slats and it doesn't block the noise, or they still complain about the noise or the seeing through it and that kind of thing, they're still gonna be coming to you, coming to us and complaining. But if you put the masonry fence in there and you could then tell them, look, I've done everything I can possibly do other than building a bubble around my property to appease everybody that's around me, I would feel like that'd be a pretty good position to be in.
That goes from $30,000 to $90,000, right? And I'm just gonna tell you, like, this issue with Mike Harper goes back to the day I built the building. When he was here, he sat back here and he thought, because he didn't read the entire card that was sent out to him, that he thought I was building a storage facility. He thought storage units were going across the street from his building, from his house. I don't hear from him forever until anything comes up in here, ever.
Yeah, I'm, regardless.
And
there
I
were
can tell you
several-
400 North is louder than we are.
There were several neighbors that came, I'm just saying,
They were. I know them all.
I'm just saying, if you put the fence in the way we're interpreting it, staff's interpreting it, then you can tell the neighbors, hey, I've done everything that I can do to appease you, and I can't do anything more. If you put the slats in there, they're gonna continue to complain. So I'm just saying, for me as a business owner, I probably would do everything I could do.
So this whole development is out of my pocket. The quote to just put in the curb gutter sidewalk and the storm drain is $132,000. I got another $30,000 fence, and I've got another $10,000 masonry fence on the one side just to get back to the original property line. And I'm talking on the east side, from the front, back to where the vinyl fence is now, right? So I'm into this a ton of money.
Well, I'm
So
assuming most
to just
commercial
go,
developers
I'm
don't.
just gonna tell you to go just appease a neighbor, to put in an 8-foot fence after I've been there
I'm
for
just
20 years, I'm just telling you, I can't do
I'm
that.
just expressing
Right.
my opinion
Right.
as to how to potentially settle some of the history you have.
But even Todd Carson was here, and if this code is correct, Todd's got a commercial property that he's running right next to a residential, and there's no fence. There's like a barbed wire, chain link fence there. He doesn't have a masonry fence between him on the east side.
Who is that?
Todd Carson. Yep, the excavator. And he has twice the equipment and everything that I've got, right? So that is in this code, but these are two specific different ordinances. This is about enclosing the property. I mean, this is about outside storage. If there was no outside storage, I wouldn't even need this fence.
Well, and I guess,
And you're also jumping back and forth, sorry, Sharon.
Tim, you really need to let the commissioners talk. I
Well,
mean.
he
they-
wasn't finished with his thought.
Well, I
let's
know,
just-
but she already asked the other commissioner if they
Marchbanks.
had Marchbanks and they keep getting interrupted. So let's let our commission speak.
One last thing, 050 talks about a 6-foot tall fence. 040 talks about a 7-foot tall fence.
okay, go ahead.
I'm solidly with Scott on the 040 in regards to the east property line. But then I'm totally sympathetic to what Commissioner Johnson said on 050 when it comes to storage. This is not apples for apples to the Walmart or the low book sales. None of us were on the commission when those were approved, so I don't know exactly, but to me, it's not an apple for apple scenario because of the storage element, which you admitted you wouldn't have to even be talking about this if there wasn't storage involved.
Correct, but you could also argue that the cars are their inventory. That's their outside storage.
Yeah, but we've not put up, anywhere I'm aware of, made car lots, put fencing in front of their car lot.
It's the only place, Mike, that I could find specific that were
I can
to
see where you're.
this. That was the
I
only thing
I can
in this
see,
situation.
see where you're coming from on it. There's some ambivalence here. There is. You know, it's not totally cut and dried, but because of that, and again, I find myself, again with Scott, solidly on the residential component on the east boundary. But then 050 is very applicable because of the storage. And that's where I guess I have to rely on staff and legal to, to not set some brand new precedents.
And I guess that's my question, Brian. If you read this, right, if we determined as a commission that we thought a vinyl fence was site obscuring, and we said that could go in on the north side, right? That's the north side. I agree, the east side needs to be.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It's on the property line. That would just, at that point, would set the precedence that saying, as a city, we agree that a vinyl fence is site obscuring.
I mean,
right? And I mean, that's what would be saying at that point, but there would be no problem with the ordinance at that point, other than we would be making that statement, basically in a public meeting, that that's what we agree is a site obscuring fence.
Right. Well, as far as, I think we've.
Well, I have a
Renee, do
few
you
more
any
things.
additional
I like the idea that Tim's willing to do an 8-foot fence. I like that this is definitely an economical, but also, you know, a well-constructed fence. I mean, we have a very informed business owner here that's not only informed in ordinances and planning code, but also fence products. I mean, he's like the ultimate consultant for us on this in a way, right? And, you know, I can appreciate costs, and I'm glad that he wanted to counter and clarify, because it's a lot of money. I've been a small business owner. I've had to make payroll, and Tim has been a long time business owner in our community. He's been through 2008, he's been through 2020, he's been through all the ups and downs, and he's always stayed in business. He's had employees, he's paid people, and I am gonna side on the business owner side. If there's nothing wrong with that. I love a black fence. It does disappear. I'm looking at the fence over there at the pool. You don't even take notice of it because it's kind of handsome in a way. I like the black. I think if he were to put up a masonry or a white fence, his neighbors across the street are gonna complain about that. Like, hey, it's so bright, it's shining in my window. You know, I like a black fence. I think it's good looking. I like that it's gonna be 8 feet. And I am sensitive to costs on what it costs to run a business, what it costs to adhere to the code and ordinances. And, you know, we have, you know, it's not that 400 North is, you know, the shining star of our city, because the right of the corner, State Street and 400 North, it's damn ugly, you know? And so to think that, you know, Tim is, you know, taking down 400 North from a beautification standpoint, he's not.
It has been, though.
He's had his challenges, and, you know, with a fence like that, though, it's gonna solve a lot of problems. He's putting in the curb and gutter, he's putting out a lot of money. It's not like he's going to getting a loan for it. He's trying to get it done within his own cash flow, and that's expensive.
And I think you gotta be careful with that justification though, with the expense, because every time you look at a project, then are you going to say, well, that cost them too much money?
But
You
if
know,
you're
and so-
bringing
no,
a
but-
fair alternative, you know,
But that's,
so.
then that's what you, then look at alternatives, but you can't base your decision off expense.
Well, and we need to probably refine some things in here too, just to mitigate problems in the future, because there are so many solutions that people could use now for fencing. And is a masonry wall, what's the tallest masonry wall you could do?
Well, you can go high in masonry, it's just hard with the concrete precast.
Well, and the fact that you need moving fences or gates.
I gotta have gates.
Yeah, you gotta have gates. So what would be the solution for gates?
You can't do it in vinyl, they won't work that big. It has to be chain link, it has to be a chain link product, it has to be some sort of steel product.
And I think the commission would understand that. If you did a concrete fence or masonry fence with a chain link gate, that's understandable. That's what you have to do to get access to your property.
I think what we should do, all of the commissioners have had a chance to voice their opinions on this. Is it appropriate then to take a vote of the commissioners, of those who would like to follow staff's interpretation on this, or or how would we do that?
I think you could have
No
some.
motion on
I
here.
think you could have,
There is no motion.
There's no motion on here.
We're not here to make a motion tonight, we're just here to
No, it's
give
just
feedback.
it's just an opinion from the commission.
I think what we're technically doing is amending the site plan to add this specific clarification, so I do think a motion would be appropriate.
Okay. I think we're ready for that. Mike, would you like to make a motion?
You know what? I think Scott and Steve are more articulate on this matter
Okay,
than
go ahead,
I've
Scott,
been.
then.
Okay, so I'm making a motion to amend,
Or to clarify the site plan.
to clarify site plan to either, to
Identify that the fence on the north you know.
will be
side.
a 7-foot concrete fence and
And can have-
according to staff's recommendations, or
That
is,
would be- that would
but
work.
then if somebody agrees totally, if we're split down the middle, that's really not
Then
gonna
they
go
could say, I
anywhere.
would move to amend that motion to tweak it this way, however they would like that motion to be tweaked, or they can just vote no, you know, so. But that motion that you made would work to say, I think we should follow staff's recommendations.
Okay, I can make that motion, but then it'll go back to more,
goes back and
it'll go
forth,
back
we
to
need a
more discussion,
second,
it won't be
right.
I don't expect that to,
No, it needs to just come to a vote on it as far
When you
as
make- yeah, if
following
you're
staff's
gonna vote, it's
recommendation.
but I'm gonna make it, and then everybody's gonna vote, and it won't pass, and we'll have to,
Well, you don't know
You don't
that.
know, you haven't put up the vote.
all right. I make a motion to amend the site plan, the existing site plan for Colt Neck Fence Specialists at 200 West, 400 North, to clarify that the fence along the north property line,
North side,
No,
north
side of the
side,
property.
the north side of the property be consistent with staff's recommendation, which is a 7-foot masonry fence.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I even think even more specifically, the north perimeter fencing of the storage area.
yeah.
Okay. Can amend that motion.
Okay.
Okay,
Because it's not the property line, and it's not specific enough to say north side. I think it should say
Okay.
perimeter of the storage area.
okay. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed?
No.
No.
I want some more discussion.
Okay,
Okay, some more discussion.
okay.
Would we have to amend our ordinance in order to clarify that because this is being used for a storage area, that it doesn't mean we're approving it for all storage areas? Or would we, in effect?
If you approve this, we would need to go back in. If you say this constitutes site obscuring, and we want to change it and not let it in every area, we would need to go in and identify, this is good for this area, not that area. Because this would be site obscuring.
But, Brian,
Uh-huh,
I ask a question,
sure.
and this is based upon my interpretation, so I want if we said this is site obscuring with my interpretation of .050, which is for storage yards and that stuff, that does not mean that product would then meet 040, which we specifically say a masonry
I agree
concrete.
completely.
So this isn't saying that someone who builds between commercial and residential can all of a sudden use that.
Right.
On the property line, when they adjoin, it will have to still be a masonry fence.
Right.
Right? What we're saying is that this product, and I don't know where else this definition will ever be used, but if something else like this comes up, this product can be used as site obscuring if we say we can go forward with it.
But that would have to be identified in our ordinance, right?
Anytime somebody wants a site obscuring fence, they can come back and say,
This is,
okay, the council, because if you don't require a masonry fence, then the commission, and this is your discretion, is saying, okay, we don't think that 040 applies here. We think Mr. Tim, sorry, Tim.
You're
Clay, has convinced us that this is the better approach. But then he's also saying, hey, this is site obscuring, and we're identifying that this, we agree with him that this is site obscuring. Does that make sense?
yeah, so,
But I agree 100% with you. This would not eliminate a concrete wall on the boundary line between commercial and residential.
And so in effect, what we would be doing is whatever we approve, whether it's this black product or whether it was vinyl or whatever, we would be approving that meets our definition of site obscuring. And so to me, that's the bigger part. And then later on, if there was an ordinance to further define site obscuring, we probably could even make a list or whatever. We don't have one currently, so we can't go back to that.
And I would just point out that there are places where we require the concrete fence between, you know, he pointed to Walmart, and that's a really good example down along that place. But if you look at the full fence around Walmart, it does not follow the property line. It's set back from the property line and follows the road, and the property line actually goes out probably 20, 30 feet, kind of this same setback thing. Anyway, but that's just a thought that.
Right. And what's,
Can I say something? Because I feel like just even how the motion was said, if you're going to a site obscuring fence and then you're saying that I've got to go to 7 feet and the code says 6, like this is where I think you got to separate these things. Like 404 is a completely separate, and I don't think that it applies here. If you're,
I think it does.
okay, then I'm not doing a storage yard. Like they're right to left. Right? The 404 is talking about your property line between the two. 505 is talking about storage, and that's what we're talking about. So then you're changing the code to say that I'm required to go 7 feet on that side when everybody else can go 6. 7 feet is in your 404.
another clarification, Brian, since 050 says 6 feet, in our motion, can we require 8?
Again, staff's interpretation is that the 040 is what applies, and that's where the 84, or the 7, right?
Right, that's
That's
where
where
the 7.
comes
In
from.
our motion, it probably wouldn't be appropriate to put that it's an 8-foot fence anywhere,
No.
even though that's what he said he wants to do,
He wants to do that.
but he can go higher, but we couldn't require that
I'm just
currently.
We've had several situations where people say a 7-foot masonry fence is hard to get, and so they put an 8-foot, because a 7-foot's difficult to
fine.
find. So
And that's
that could very well happen, but I think when we started this whole thing off this evening, the first comment from him, from Mr. Clyde,
Yeah.
his first comment was the first line of 040. And if you read that very carefully, a masonry or concrete fence 7 feet high shall be constructed and maintained along any property line between a non-residential development and a residential use or residential zone. Now somewhere in there, I know you're taking, offense maybe to the word line, but I think that's, we're getting into minute details, but I don't know that the word line is that critical, be maintained along any property between a non-residential development, a residential use, or residential zone, which starts immediately outside of 400 is
Then if that's the case,
zoned residential.
then Steve should have put one in his front of his building.
That was my question, Scott, help me reconcile this.
I guess I'm not familiar with I haven't looked at your situation, I don't.
I just have a commercial building,
Yeah.
right? And when we built it, we were required to put the 2-rail picket fence because that was the commercial, but across the street is residential. And because across the street residential, if you read that, interpret that literally like you are, then once I do my 20-foot setback, I should have a 7-foot masonry fence in front of my building.
And so should low book sales.
Which doesn't make any sense to me if you're interpreting it that, and that's why we've got this weird mix
I see your
between.
point. I see your point.
And so if Tim's property, if he was gonna build a little strip mall there, we wouldn't be requiring a fence in front of the strip mall. And so then 040 wouldn't apply at all in this case.
Right, just like it doesn't apply to the
And
Carly
so,
said,
so that's why I have a hard time applying 040.
okay,
That's why I'm saying, because it's a storage yard, I'm like, well, we got to apply a storage yard rule here. And like I said, and I don't know what my definition of a site obscuring is yet. That's why I'm not ready for a motion, because I haven't been convinced. But I don't think we're to that argument yet. We got to get through the other argument, whether we even get. But if we decide that what we have to decide is what's site obscuring and what's not, then that needs to be the argument, is are we gonna decide what's site obscuring? Because that's the ordinance to me that applies in this, and then we have to decide what is our definition of site obscuring. Not whether this means it's residential versus commercial, because unless we try to bring this in because it's a storage yard, now all of a sudden it's a different rule, but I have a hard time seeing that personally.
okay, I see your point. I mean, I'm focusing on 040 and you're focusing on 050, and I see your point now. So but it's sort of interesting because I sort of feel like we need to disregard one or the other. You know, because they're not, like he says, they're not the same thing. They shouldn't be interwoven. They're one or the other. We have to figure out whether 040 applies in this location or 050, because 050, this is fairly site obscuring. I mean, I had problems with the 040 when it makes reference to shield the residential use from noise in 040. I don't think this is gonna shield the residential use from noise as efficiently as a wall. But if we're gonna disregard 040, this is pretty site obscuring if that's the only term that we're focusing on.
Regardless of what Mr. Clyde said in the beginning, there are two separate issues here. There's the 04 issue, and it's clearly defined on the east boundary. And to me, you gotta use 05 too, and then it's maybe not as good as it could be, but it's somewhat clearly defined.
I think so too.
So I don't know how we can use one or the other.
I think you just need to make a decision.
I think so
on
too.
The fence, the fence that you want, you know, if you look at Commissioner Johnson's property, it is a drive approach right there where it's residential, so of course you wouldn't put a wall right there, because there's the drive approach, his parking's behind the building. And so, I think you just need to make a decision. You've had a consistency for a while on what you've defined as
Right.
site obscuring. You know, if you want a different material, then, you know, you can consider that. But I think you just need to decide with the material requirement that for the fence along 400 North.
I also have a drive approach, right?
Well, and
Yeah, and you can use
I mean, I have a drive approach into that
you can use a
parcel
gate.
too.
Yeah, that's where you.
No, it's just a drive approach onto that
the
piece.
use of your CPA tax firm building is much different than this is. It's much different than this is. And I guess I'm looking at the precedent we have set, and if we need to change that, then we'll have to look at that. But as far as the precedent we've set and what we've required every other business next to residential to adhere to me, and when I read through this, I know it's more expensive. It is for everyone that has to put one in.
Well, this is what I'm doing on the east, right?
Well, no, and I guess my feelings is appreciate the things you're doing to your property now, but that's been a long time coming.
That's true. It took me 17 years to change the zoning.
Well, yeah, but it's not just
When we
that.
did this was the
Also,
third
well, if
application.
we're gonna go to that respect, it also costs the city thousands of dollars to go to court with Mr.
Cost me thousands of dollars too.
With Mr.
Brian.
Clyde to clean up the junk from his property, so, and to quit using the residential property for commercial use and running semis through it. So if we wanna go that direction, we can go that all night long, so.
That's right.
This is just
Okay.
really hard because
We
we
just
have.
need to make a decision how each one of us feel as far as how this is interpreted. We need to make a motion on it, take a vote on it, and just decide. Because we can go back and forth on this all night long.
I agree. I just struggle with two things, you know. One is precedent, right? I
Right.
struggle with precedent. And then I also struggle with the fact that something that we deal with on a regular basis on the planning commission is, this isn't what we want. Our job is to interpret what's written, and so it's sort of,
Right.
so it's not our want, because there's been a lot of projects that come to us that we don't want, but they complied and we had to move
Right.
forward with them. So you have to wrestle with both of those things.
Yeah, and it's not what we want, it's what's, what is gonna be best to mitigate those impacts like we've discussed about site obscuring, about noise, about view obstruction from the outdoor storage. Those are the things you're considering.
And also that this is one of our major corridors as far as going from State Street clear up to the east side. So,
Yeah, and I don't know how long this weathers or whatever, but I would almost say that this black product along the corridor will probably look better. Especially if you're gonna have gates that are different colors and, they'd be all the same color and look, I think as far as if we're looking at aesthetics, I would say this black product's gonna look better than any other product along the corridor.
Is that because he can make a fence, a gate in that?
In that
Yes, right,
product.
it's got a
right, in
consistent
that-
look.
Consistent look in that product. The only negative to it, well, two negatives I could possibly see is longevity. I don't know how long that will last versus a concrete wall, and maybe the sound barrier component. Other than that, I don't know if there's a big difference between the two as far as, in my opinion, between the two as far as look. I actually think that probably looks better.
Can you do a block wall? I'm just,
Yeah, it's just the same. It's gonna be the same as your concrete, especially once you start going to those heights.
okay, we've had more discussion. Is there really any purpose in having more discussion at this point? I don't really think so. I think we need to just determine how each of us feels individually and take a vote on the motion and move forward. Okay? Scott, are you willing to make that motion again?
Let me think through if there's anything I want to change on it, or,
Okay.
okay, I'll just try to be a little bit more clearer, I guess.
Okay.
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 I move to amend the site plan for Colt Neck Fence Specialists at 200 West, 400 North to include a clarification of the type of fencing along the north perimeter of the property. To be a masonry, consistent with 17.48.040, a masonry or concrete fence 7 feet high shall be constructed and maintained along any property line between a non-residential development and a residential use or a residential zone, which is consistent with staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion. Do you want to second that again, Jared? Or do you have anything to add to?
well, there's the issue of the 6 foot or 7 foot.
Well, it's
So,
at least 6.
Yeah.
So,
does the motion have to specify the height?
Well, it's in the ordinance, that's why I read it straight out of the ordinance, so, I mean,
Okay, well, let's bring it back up for a vote then. I second the motion.
okay. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
The motion carries according to staff's interpretation. Thank thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for all you're doing there. Do you want these pictures? Okay. The next item on our agenda is item number 5, accessory apartment acknowledgement discussion, and our presenting staff is Michael Florence.
All right, thanks, Commissioners. So this item, this is just for discussion. There's no decisions that are being made. I'm just looking for feedback on this. So part of our, as you're well aware, we've amended our moderate income housing plan a couple different times since you've all been on the commission. Last year, we were mandated by the state to come up with new goals or update their or to adopt their updated goals and pick 5 of them. And so the one I want to discuss this evening was about accessory apartments. The goal we have for that is to reduce regulations related to accessory apartments. We've done that. We've updated our ordinance pretty much every year since I've been here. With the different changes in state law, we have 243 that have building permits. We've got more that were approved under an amnesty program back in the early 90s. But our goal to the state is that, or not our goal, we're required to report every year in August how many accessory apartments we use, or how many have been constructed, or we've issued building permits for. And then to try and continue to promote that, we're trying to come up with a program that would encourage people to, have a safe accessory apartment, one that is safe to the tenants, one that's safe to first responders, and then ones that we could count and tell the state, look, we've reached out, we're trying to help these that are maybe illegal to become legal, and what can we do to help them so we can continue to promote our numbers. That goal is approving these 5 moderate income housing goals. We have to continue to work on these and adopt them, and because we also have to, some of our road funds are dependent upon us implementing these goals. And so I looked at a lot of ordinances or programs from around the country about trying to make or help accessory apartments become legal. And so I took portions of those. So there's a lot out of California, and they are extremely strict, where you've got to tear the sheetrock off the walls and make sure everything is constructed properly. We're not going to that extent. We're basically looking at some life safety concerns, and then making sure that, and I gave it kind of a checklist of items that we would go through. And so what would happen is we'll promote this like crazy, telling people, look, we have to report these numbers to the state every year. We want to encourage safe units. You'll apply for a building permit. You'll submit a site plan if it's a detached structure, or a floor plan. Sorry, if it's a detached, you'd submit a site plan and a floor plan. If it's internal to the home, you'd submit a floor plan to us, apply for a building permit, and you would submit this self-assessment questionnaire. So you would go through this, letting us know if it's structurally safe, or are there smells, are the bedrooms heated, is there smoke detectors, are there CO2 detectors, and they'll submit this with their building plans or with their building permit. Then the building official and the city planner will meet with them and go do an inspection of the unit and try, see if there's anything that may cause some life safety issues. And then we would issue an acknowledgement, certificate of acknowledgement that we're acknowledging that we've went through with the owner and we feel it's safe, and we'll put you on the list that it's approved. And so we're just trying to come up with a way to help people, you know, voluntarily increase our numbers for accessory apartments. Because we know there's probably 243 legal ones, there's probably another 250 that are, you know, haven't been legal. And so,
So what if it doesn't pass?
this isn't really a passing thing, this is just, oh, sorry, if the unit doesn't pass.
Correct. If the unit
Yeah.
doesn't pass, what happens next?
So if it's a life safety thing, then they need to take care of that. You know, for example, you know, if their window is too small, that someone can't get out of a bedroom window, they need to bring that into compliance, and state law even suggests that, you know, the state law even has the requirement in there that this, unless will make the facility or the home structurally unsound, the city can require that because it's a life safety issue. If you're running a business and you've got someone in your basement and they can't get out, that's a concern. But if it's like, let's say it's a parking issue, then, you know, you can't meet the requirement of having,
30 feet.
yeah.
You have to have
For,
a
that's
park
only
of
for
30 feet.
and that's for detached.
Yeah.
We may look at that again as part of this. You know, then we would also issue a certificate, you know, record something on the title saying your non-conforming is according to the parking on there. Not that the unit's non-conforming, but the parking's non-conforming.
So would the city in any way
They'd be fine.
prevent them from renting it if they're non-conforming?
No, you're already renting it. We want to work with you to try and bring it into conformance as much as possible.
Orem City does something interesting. Maybe I'm not aware of it, but they actually publish a list of the homes that have approved or recognized as accessory apartments. That's nice as home buyers, because if it has an accessory apartment, the home buyer can just get right on the website and find that property rather than call you guys.
Yeah.
But that might be the first step for some homeowners who may not know whether, because they didn't put the accessory apartment in, maybe they don't know if it's legal or not. They're too scared to come to you to ask.
Well, that's why it's amnesty, right? You're kind of approaching it from that way.
And I think that's the right approach.
Agreed.
too.
But here's the vernacular, though. If you were just to, let's say you put out an email or a flyer, or it's in the newsletter, and it says, do you have an accessory dwelling unit? Most people are going to dismiss that. It's, hey, do you have a basement apartment? Do you have an in-law quarter that you're renting? I mean, use some of the common vernacular so the light bulb goes off for people. And then you go into the more legal terminology or ordinance terminology for people, because I think that doesn't compute with people. Accessory dwelling unit. I'm like, what is
'Cause
that? A
we
nice
did another-
shed?
Yeah, we did another amnesty program. We did that one back in the 90s. We
Yeah.
did another one 10, 15 years ago, and there was like one person that,
I
you
think,
know.
I
and
think
so-
it's good that we have to educate people why. 'Cause I think a lot of people
Safety.
think, oh, I'm getting on the list now, and then they're gonna come and
Well, people, if
shake me
they,
down later, you know what I'm saying? Right, they're gonna come later and say, well, you don't have a separate heating system, or you don't have, you know, I think there's all these worries of people
Sure.
like,
And a lot of
If-
those worries that went away that people don't know about, like the separate electrical panel, all that stuff, the state's basically eliminated
right.
all of that stuff.
And so,
set the stage that, you know, the reason we want to know is because there is a housing crisis, and certainly you know that. People feel it, right?
and why
'Cause
it benefits the city, right? The city we'll actually get credit for what we're already doing that no one else is doing if we would just get the numbers. And I think that education's more important probably than the amnesty program is to educate people why it's important to get it reported and get it in. And I don't know, it says get a building permit. What's the cost on that?
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, because I know when I did my accessory apartment, it killed me. I mean, I was back in the day, I had to pay the park impact fee, and and I'm like, I just want my brother to live with me, you know, but in case we rent it sometime, and I'm like, we're
And I think
$5,000
safety,
of fees into it just to, and it, you know,
We're still working that out. I think most accessory apartments, the building permit fee's been about $300.
So like an attached or within the structure of the home.
It's been about 300 with.
I think that
in
would
a-
be a very interesting
I
data
like
point to
Jared's
put
idea
out.
Too, to publish a list, so people know if they're already on, that they're already on the
Yeah.
list. More importantly, for people to know that they're not on the list in case that concerns them about either selling their home as legal accessory apartment, or if really they ought to be renting it out as an
Or
accessory
you-
apartment.
Do you want to
be
improve,
honest.
increase the value of your home?
Yeah,
You
sell
know,
it that way.
But also, I think pitching it as safety, like, hey, we'll do a free safety check on your, your basement apartment.
I just.
You don't think so?
What's really hard about safety is the windows. I mean, it's not no small feat to go in and
But-
say, I have a 1940s home that has a basement window this big, and I'm gonna have to go in and saw cut it and make it this big old thing and not affect it structurally. I mean, I just don't see there's any motivation in this. I believe we're gonna get credit from the state for trying to do this, regardless of whether people call us and say, I have an accessory apartment. We're gonna get credit for doing this, but I don't know if there's really a motivation for this unless, of course, we're out there going, there's 2 addresses at this house. And you send the owner a letter saying, according to post office records, you have 2 addresses at this house. Do you have a legal accessory apartment? I mean, so it's really,
And it's much easier to do it today than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have to pay double utilities for 25 years like Mike Marchbanks did. Even though it was your parents living in the basement.
Let's do an ad campaign with Mike Marchbanks as the primary
I
offender.
paid double
Yeah.
public utilities for 25 years.
Well, and Mike, I wondered too, you said you're gonna kind of publicize things in a newsletter thing yearly and also social media. I know there would be some expense involved, but I wondered if even a letter going out to the residents would, with a lot of this information on and the reasons why and the reasons why they'd like them to, just because then I think it would reach more people. And more people would pay attention, and especially if they're renting an illegal
Well,
apartment.
and Scott, I don't know, we'll get credit for it, but we need numbers, don't we, Mike?
we need
We
both.
do.
We need
We
both.
do.
But
We
we're
need-
gonna get credit for doing this because we're trying
But
to do
again, at
something.
the end of the day, we need to increase the amount of units we're actually showing that we
Absolutely.
have.
And I think it's okay for residents to know those things, know the reasons why.
People hate potholes.
And,
Point out
you
the
know, a lot of
potholes.
people don't pay any attention to social media, and a lot of people don't read the newsletter.
Yep.
But if a letter comes to them in the mail, especially if they've got a illegal accessory apartment.
Yeah, I mean, even if we can 4 or 5 a year, we can get some
Yeah.
brought on board. I mean, we approve about, I don't know, 10 or 12 a year,
20 last year.
20 accessory apartments last year.
But they probably went into 20, most of them were probably brand new homes, weren't they?
Yes, almost every home we approve now has an accessory apartment with it.
It's only,
Cause it's easy, it's crazy not to do it with a brand new home, but I can
Right.
see the concern of somebody that may see themselves getting into a bunch of expense that they can't afford.
Wasn't there an exception on our definition of who can live in your basement, i.e. relatives could,
Right.
without saying it? Okay, so that, when you throw in the word relative, that's really broad. I can open up my family tree app and I
Yeah.
guarantee I'm related to every single one of you.
Yeah, fine.
We're the
relatives,
15th cousin,
yeah,
12 times removed. So, I mean, so you sort of have to,
Yeah, but that kinda went away, cause I used to have to sign, once I did quit paying W utilities, it was because I was signing a waiver. From then on, I signed a waiver, until just a couple of years ago, I was signing a waiver.
If you have a second
basically-
kitchen, you had to basically say,
that signing a waiver saying that anybody that lives in my basement apartment is a relative.
no, okay.
Yeah, is a relative, and Sherry that passed away out here, she's the one that said, hey, Mike, why do you pay W utilities? We just signed this waiver, and
So is that still the case? Somebody could be totally illegal, but then as long as they read what we send them and they go, oh, but it's a relative, doesn't apply to me.
I don't think we do that now.
they haven't done it for 2 or
Yeah.
3 years now.
Really, we just have two, we have a second kitchen agreement that you sign saying that it won't be an apartment, it'll really just be a second kitchen. And then we record a notice, if you have an accessory apartment, we record a notice on the property that there's an accessory apartment there.
There are situations where someone, for example, down in Anderson Farms, they're not allowed to have accessory apartments, but people still have elderly parents that wanna come live there, and they're not renting it, you know, they're not charging rent to their elderly parents. But there is another, technically, there's, you know, these like middle-aged people with no kids, and then their parents downstairs, so technically two families, but it's not rented out, and that, I guess it's kind of a, you know, gray area, but I don't count that necessarily as an accessory apartment. I think that's your right to have your parents
It's
in
your
your
family.
Once there's a, you know, like a kitchen, you're gonna be renting it out to a family, you're gonna be adding traffic to the neighborhood, significant traffic, then I think it's a little bit different.
Right. I like Sharon's idea of, you know, a mailer, just an education piece, because then you know everybody would get it,
I think it's like a frequently asked questions mailer.
you know?
You know, what does it take to have an accessory apartment? Here, click on this link to, here's the criteria, because these criteria are actually pretty reasonable, especially since where we've come from with other cities. I mean, it's been really onerous. It's how much does the building permit cost? You know, what does it take to put one in? What does it take one to
Make it
make
compliant.
it legal?
Yeah.
How much does it, I don't know that it's the city's place to say, you know, personally as a realtor, a legally accepted and recognized accessory apartment on a home is very valuable. It's like one of the best investments that you could make,
Right.
to either put one in or make it legal so that when you go to resell it. So you could just say, the resale value on these is X amount higher than
This is really good.
whatever.
Speak
So
to the
just like a
upside.
frequently asked questions flyer that just kind of asks some of those. And what happens if we just determine that you're not in compliance? Well, then, you know, just simple little questions like that with a brief answer.
I think the problem is there really is no ordinance. There's no law that gives you, go out and fine someone for not doing it. Is there not in our city?
Well, yeah,
No,
it's,
we
if they're not in
could.
compliance with the
Yeah,
code,
we
you
can.
could.
Yeah, if you're,
If it's not legal.
Never to do that.
Yeah, they've never done it. I mean, just.
in Salt Lake County, you can see how many addresses are issued on each lot, and you can just go through every lot, and I don't know if the county recorder in Utah County doesn't have that, I don't think. But, you know, there's ways of working with the post office or the county recorder and getting that information, but we've chosen, Mary and I are way too busy to do that.
Yeah.
And
It's,
so,
it's complaint driven in most cities.
Yeah.
But I've seen cities, Provo, go so far as to make owners tear out second kitchens or disable them. I've several cases that I've actually been involved with.
we
A
have
couple
issued
of those.
some notices saying you have an illegal one when we get complaints, because there's way too many cars parked clear out on the street, and then, you know, it's more of a party pad than it is, you know, so residents complain to us, and we've issued 2 or 3 over the years, but.
Yeah, but
Well, I
then you
guess that's
say,
the benefit is to avoid complaints from
I
neighbors. You can list
yeah,
that. Increase home value, avoid complaints from your neighbors, you know.
and now it's never been easier than to become in compliance.
Today only.
We'll talk about that off.
Just barely.
Start,
Okay,
though, I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. You put, like I say, I think we're gonna get credit for it, for at least trying.
and I don't know anybody in the state that's doing it quite like this, and
Yeah.
I think if, once we refine it more, I really think it could be a model for a lot of municipalities.
I think so too.
I really like the non-conforming and conforming versus legal and illegal. I mean,
That makes people nervous.
if they're, yeah, because there's non-conforming duplexes all over this county, but they're still being sold as duplexes, you use them as a duplex, you know, but there is a distinction between a conforming and a non-conforming duplex. And so I like that terminology. I think it's a softer term than legal or illegal.
I like that terminology. The only thought I would have is that, does legal and illegal, does that motivate
That scares
people more?
people. Conforming and non-conforming's better. Legal and not legal is scary.
I was gonna say,
A few of them where
does that motivate people more?
someone has a
Because
third
the worst that
unit,
can happen
you know,
if
what do
come to
you,
the city and say, I have one, is they
That-
say
that
it's
would be
non-conforming,
illegal.
not that you're illegal. And all of a
Okay.
sudden, you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, can I have a
You're-
temporary?
That, I think it'd be more of a deterrent if people say think we're in trouble legally.
Okay.
Just one other thing, the city council, let me go to that real quick. So we're complying with number 1 already because we approve, we already have accessory apartments, we approve them, we've had them for over 20 years. The city council just approved this, so they no longer charge impact fees for detached accessory apartments. As of about a month ago, they removed that as well, so we're now in compliance with 1 and 2, and so we're working on number 3, 4, and 5 this year and next year. So probably number 4 is what we'll be working on next out of these. So.
The biggest question I had, and I asked you about this earlier today, was the city is required to set aside 5% of the budget for housing preservation. And then on the, down where the car dealerships are,
Yeah.
10% of that has to be set aside.
Yeah,
and
so
you and I
that's,
talked about that, so maybe you explain that a little bit.
yeah, so for strategy number 3, we have 2 RDA areas. We've got the 700 North RDA and the Lindon Park RDA for the Kia dealership. So by state law, we're required to provide 5% set aside in housing for the 700 North, I think that is, and 10% in the Lindon Park, which is for the Kia dealership. So those are laws that have been in place for a number of years. So we'll get a tax increment off of that, off the property taxes. We have to set aside 5 and 10% off of that and use towards affordable housing. And so we're gonna come up with some strategies on when we start getting more tax increment off of those properties, how we use those funds.
Could those be used to pay the building permits?
I think I hadn't thought about that. That could be an option.
Right, we have this pot of money we have to use and say, the city, for this, until this money's gone, and kind of give people an incentive, first come, first serve, you know?
Yeah.
You can,
Or I'd say probably, I would consider offsetting the impact fees, because there's some of the impact fees that shouldn't be waived. Like, for example, police, public safety. Those are hard fixed costs that every time another family moves in, it affects the community. And pretty soon, we're gonna find ourselves 20 years down the road going, we still have 17 cops, but we now have 25,000 residents, you know?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful to maybe offset some of those as well.
So, yeah, there's quite a few ways. You can partner with a housing authority and they can, you can put some of that funding towards affordable units with a housing authority. There's quite a few different options that we're going to be
Even at another
exploring.
location even, right?
You for the Lindon Park one with the Kia dealership, you can use
Right.
that one anywhere. The
Right.
state law, when the 700 North RDA was approved, that 5% has to stay in that area.
Okay.
But the 10% for the other can be used in other locations.
Great job.
So we'll continue to refine this and talk to the council.
I think you've done a
and-
really good job.
Yeah, it's more about how we're gonna implement it and, those
Right.
things, so.
Thanks, Mike.
A lot of work.
Yeah, appreciate you, the great job you've done on that. I guess unless there's any other discussion on that, I guess we're ready for.
I apologize, I had a church thing and it ran over.
Per usual.
Yeah.
It's okay, you missed a lively discussion.
Can you just recoup what you decided? I had read the staff report thoroughly.
We voted to amend the.
To clarify and
To
or amend it.
clarify that the wall is required, and it passed 4-2,
So he's required to put up
so he is.
a concrete.
There was a lot of discussion about the two different sections and which section applies, whether it's the screening or whether it's the
Right.
fence abutting residential zone or property, so that's where it was hard to reconcile the two.
Right.
So what size is he required to build?
Well, at least
a 7-foot
seven.
masonry
Yeah.
fence, just
Yeah,
like the
at least
code
seven.
says.
He's-
We talked about maybe even changing that to 8 feet, because 7 is so hard to find.
Yeah, you almost have to bury an 8-foot to get a 7.
Well, and
But
they
that's
can do,
another thing.
they can do 8 foot.
Yeah.
It just has to be at least 7.
Needless to say, you went out of here not very happy.
Yeah, I didn't
No,
think
not
you
at
would.
all.
He made good points. I mean, he came in
Very
reading,
prepared.
he came in reading the details, and the codes aren't as clear as they could be, but I think they were sufficient.
Well, those people who live across from me are in my neighborhood and Ford, and their concern is he's not following what we had asked him to do, is stacking things above the fence and things like that. Was there anything discussed?
We didn't discuss
This
that.
was
It's just a code
concerning
compliance issue.
The fence.
Yeah, it's just a code compliance issue.
Okay.
I have a couple other things if you're ready to,
Yeah, there was just one thing, and well, this is Renee's last time with us.
True.
And.
Our house is under
did you have
contract
that
It is?
plaque for
in
him?
6 days.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It is under contract?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it?
Oh,
we want to appreciate the, been on
And then
since
this is a
2019.
card
Oh
from the
my
commission
goodness.
too, Renee.
Oh, thank you.
From the commission.
What did I
So,
get?
that's just a little gift to you.
Oh my gosh, how sweet.
I know, isn't
That's
it
really
neat?
neat.
Yeah,
What a
that's really
nice,
neat. That
Very
pretty?
nice.
for my office.
That's very pretty.
Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate your years of service.
Well,
and
it's,
all you've contributed.
And I think you'll continue.
I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and it's been fun to just rub shoulders and cross paths with so many new people in this city, you know? I've really enjoyed that part.
Yeah.
Expand the brain matter.
Well, and like I said in my card, we wish you the very best in building the farm.
Yeah, that's happening. I got baby chicks, I got horses, I got whatever. So,
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
for your
much.
service and hope you can get your leg.
oh,
feeling better.
that's a whole nother drama going on, so yeah.
Well, and that's a loss for the neighborhood up there too.
So they say.
So what should I avoid? Thursday, I'm going skiing, and I haven't been for several years.
Don't
Not
ski
once,
if
avoid that.
it was flat light, so don't ski when there's flat light, because you can't really differentiate some of the bumps and I was skiing with my husband and my son, his daughter, and his wife, and they all saw me just yard sail it. I had to go down in the ski patrol toboggan, the ride of shame.
Where were you
I was up
skiing
at
at?
Deer Valley skiing, they were very good. But here's the crazy thing, is like, I didn't have a lot of pain, I don't have a lot of pain, but they told me I tore my ACL and I tore my
Your
MCL and ruptured the capsule behind my knee. It was like, oh gee.
Maybe I'll downgrade to green.
Take the green, stay on the easies.
Stay on the greens.
A while to heal, yeah. Are you gonna have surgery?
I mean, that's not completely been determined yet, so on Monday I'm going to another specialist to see what we can do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, boy, no.
You have lots of work to do down at the new place.
And we're supposed to close on our house on the 12th, and they just called today and wanted to move it up, and we're like, we gotta, no. We still have to move out, so anyway, but there's a nice family moving in there.
Oh, good.
They'll be good
Good,
assets to the Lindon, to the neighborhood up there, so.
great.
We sold it in 6 days.
It's really good.
And, you know, there's not a lot of Lindon inventory, and it's, so just, if you guys are getting ready to sell, do it. Have Jared sell it for you.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you
And
very
then-
much.
And then we do have another planning commissioner starting next time. Maybe Mike would like to tell you a little bit more about that.
She's on our general plan committee. She'll be here tomorrow night. Just a plug for that, for our general plan committee meeting. We're just, give you a final presentation, a run through with it. And, if you have any comments, please bring those. But Karen Danielson, she's part of that committee. She lives in the Fieldstone Homes neighborhood. She'll be on our planning commission, starting at the next meeting.
Awesome.
Karen Danielson.
Just one other comment I had was that, I don't know how many of you went down and saw Jeff Southard's townhomes? Any other, you did, because you were with me. Anyone else? They're quite nice. You know, he's done they're quite nice. I went through one of the, well, they're all 2 and 3 bedroom. Is that right? Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting is that he's building on 22 units. And someone made the comment, maybe it was Scott, that, I can't remember, someone said, well, down with the Ivory, down in Anderson Farms, that they have bought up a lot of the loans so they can offer loans at a lower interest rate. And Jeff and his father both said, we don't have to do that because we're not going to build more than these 22 units until we see
Yeah, they,
what's going to happen with the market.
yeah, they put a stop on the rest of the units.
Are they sold? What's his?
They are, he said they just, one of them we had there, they sold for, it was the 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, and he said they just sold one last week at full asking at $529.
And are they, is it main floor living?
No, all the bedrooms are all upstairs. They suspect that the 1-car garage version, they're still thinking they're gonna get $460 out of it, which is by today's standards is entry pricing, but still, there's not much there. 1-car garage, and basically it exists of a garage, a open living, dining, family room area, and then upstairs for the bedrooms, is basically what it consists of.
Kitchens on the, by the
Main
garage?
floor. Kitchen's on the main floor. Yeah, so everything's sort of down on the main, all the living places except the bedrooms. Bedrooms almost exclusively upstairs. They did have nice finishes. The 2-bedroom, I mean, not the 2, but the 2-car garage actually had a very large master bedroom and decent master
And does
suite.
everybody have a little backyard?
Little is a good term.
Okay.
Little is a good term. I mean, maybe 10 feet or so. I mean, in fact,
Okay.
They'll range between 10, the units we toured will have a 10-foot rear yard. And then you also have common open space. And then the perimeter units have 30-foot rear yards.
Yeah.
They, he said the 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, which are, what, 2150 square feet?
Yeah.
Their selling price on that is $529.
Yeah,
And
and
then
they were moderate finishes, they weren't super high end, they were moderate and nice. I mean, I like the master bath had nice, the showers were nice with like a faux marble or something, but then the secondary bath was just a fiberglass shower stall type thing, and tub. So it was, they're splitting hairs on, the quality, it's just right there. It was good, but it wasn't, you're not gonna say it's a high-end finish.
No, they're nice, they're nice.
And then one of the
The product
townhomes will be
there.
in the Parade of Homes in,
Oh, good, in
in
June
May,
or
is that,
May?
May or June?
Yeah, late May,
Yeah.
June.
So, I just have 2 things if that's,
Go ahead.
okay. The other night, we met with the city council at their last meeting, and there's a number of applications coming through with Wadley Farms. One of the, buildings that was approved as an agricultural building, he wants to turn that into more of a multi-purpose building, and so he's applied for a amended site plan approval for that and a conditional use permit. We're looking at, that red barn that's on the property, he wants to turn that into a retail use. Trying to think what else there is on there. We're looking at the definition of bed and breakfast, over there. And so, a couple of those things kick in the discussion about Main Street, finishing out Main Street there. And so, the council has decided that they want to be the final land use approval on those. And so the commission will be the recommending body, and the council will be the final land use authority on those applications for Wadley Farms, because of some of those policy decisions with Main Street and things, so.
So the Main Street, he owns all the property for Main Street, so he'd basically just have to give it to the city?
Dedicate it, like we do with most developments.
And what, you know, I was talking to his son, not Alan, and what would be the overall benefit other than it's on the master plan? I mean, is it gonna provide additional access to an area to be further developed, or is it just because we want it to go through? I mean,
Yeah, a couple things. So it's on the master plan. And then some of the ordinances that we have, basically the conditional use permit ordinances we have, require the discussion about the dedication of roads. So if you're going to do a use like a retail use, then the conditional use permit ordinance requires that you have that discussion about dedication.
When will that be on our agenda?
We're still, not for a while. We've still got to work on, we'll probably be doing an ordinance amendment as well for bed and breakfast definition. The ordinance doesn't allow short-term rentals, but he's got 3 of them over there, and so we're figuring out how to work that as into our ordinance as well. Whether that apply or meets the interpretation of a bed and breakfast or not, there's some things we have to work out with that.
Is there a difference between bed and breakfast and Airbnb?
Yes, under our current ordinance said bed and breakfast, it allows a bed and breakfast facility, which means kind of one building. And this has 3 scattered short-term rentals. And so we'll need to work on that definition to see what the planning commission and council, how they want that defined. The one caretaker residence in the back, that was approved as a caretaker residence, but it's subsequently been divided into 2 short-term rentals. And then there's a short-term rental above the office. And so those are things we need to work out. And
Right.
So does the city feel that it would be desirable to put Main Street here?
I think for connections to the community and trails and stuff,
There's not much over there to connect.
Yeah, that was all, what are we gaining by doing it? But, I mean,
Isn't it gonna be pretty expensive for the city?
so that's,
for him, right?
yeah, those are things we're gonna have to talk about. The other thing is too, those 2 roads, let me go to that real quick. And I don't wanna get into too much detail because these are pending applications, but, you know, these 2 roads here, this one doesn't have a turnaround. The purpose was to one day connect into Main Street. You know, you're a long ways on a dead-end street right here with no turnaround. And so that's, you know, one of the discussions about Main Street as well, about providing adequate emergency access for these. Actually, sorry, it's this one here. It's got some extra pavement here, but it doesn't meet any type of regulation. This one actually works because a fire truck could use this as a hammerhead.
Hammerhead.
But, so those are things we're looking at. You can see the size of a true cul-de-sac here compared to this one. So those are things discussions we'll be having with you and the city council. So the other item I had was just for your calendars on April 11th. As a reminder, we're doing a joint meeting with the city council. We're gonna have dinner that night and it's more of a social time for you and the city council, just to talk, and we're gonna just give a quick little training that night as well, so.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Okay, anyone else?
I just have
anything
the one item that, once again, the construction traffic is getting heavier on 570. I just looked out my window today and there were 6 trucks that went down and 2 that actually came up through the construction and then came out 570 in a half an hour period. We've had loaders go full speed back up and down that road, and it seems like it's very much for their convenience because they can drive through the, you know, we get response is like, well, they need to do it for this, or they need to do it for this, but I see them driving through the construction site all the time. It's a convenience thing, and we passed the plan with that condition, and I just asked that it be enforced.
Can we post signs, no vehicles on 570 greater than 6,000 pounds?
Well, a lot of it too is just the personal trucks. I mean, and they're now parking on 570 because it's not muddy. And so they're parking in front of residents and then walking down to the site, and it's
Not from Spencer.
Yeah,
I emailed Spencer and Wayne Corbridge, and they said that they would go and talk to Skip Dunn, the contractor, so that he could talk to all his subs. And that was when the wife emailed me, was that Monday or Tuesday or last week?
probably, it's a constant battle, and I don't know when she finally gets fed up enough that she emails, but it's, you know, we've talked to the residents down there too, and they're like, well, we don't want to be the constant nag on the contractor, because they're building fences and stuff for us, but it's becoming really annoying.
well, last week I believe they were connecting some sewer lines, is that what,
Yeah, and that,
for the Alvards?
they said they
And so-
were doing the, resurfacing the road, putting in the curb and extending whoever the north people, their driveway, doing that work.
Yeah,
there.
and there's been some work, but they're still accessing it by 570 versus coming up. And I just don't know why there shouldn't be anything blocking them other than convenience for them to access. Like I said, now they're parking on the road and stuff. I think it's a convenience thing, and just, so
Send another email and say.
that, I did drive down there before I came up here, and it does look like they've poured the curb, so the road turns, and so that's in. But that worries me more, that now there's a road that connects into the construction site, right? And I think some people just come from the east and they think it's easier to get into the site, but that,
We talked to the people who may be developing those single-family homes. We made sure that, which is right next to the 570 North, we talked to them about making sure there's no construction traffic, and they talked about possibly putting up something that's not, it's temporary, but it's a little bit more permanent per se than whatever's there now, So that depends on whether they'll go through their deal with the Corbridges, but, as soon as that starts, at least, we're gonna make sure all the contractors know that no one's allowed to go down that street. Wayne did say, I didn't go down and see it, but Wayne did say that he put up a sign at one point for the contractors. Did you ever see that?
well, before they tore the fence down, there was a sign on the fence.
There was, okay.
But there were still 2 trucks every day that would go and park in front of the fence and walk in, because it was more convenient. And that still, once again, why couldn't they drive or walk the other way? I know it's maybe a few more steps, but according to the what we passed, I would think that they should honor that. And so,
Legally, can you tell them they can't use the road?
I mean,
it was a condition of passing the site plan, is that no construction traffic would go through there.
The question is, though, it's a public road. How do you put a condition on a public
The
road?
only thing you do is put a temporary locked gate that the contractor has the ability to open and close in those situations.
Until the rest is
Until
done.
the rest is done.
Yeah.
They could do that, but then that doesn't resolve the parking problem, because they could still park over there and try to walk around the gate to get there, but parking's easier to deal with than flow.
So just an observance. I just watched out my window today, and it was definitely not just a necessity. It was very much a convenience that was happening today.
Okay, I'll make sure to email them again. That's really been our go-to, is just email Wayne and Spencer, and it is, me and Mike don't really go down there very often, so it's great when Ruth Ruth Ann, right? That's your
Yeah.
rep.
And
Ruth Ann emails us, cause then that's when we know we need to, remind the culverters again.
and she's kind of taken it upon herself to be the voice for those,
Good for her.
for the residents down there who feel like they can't. I mean, they come talk to her and say, we're so
Shy.
frustrated.
Yeah.
But they don't want to cause bad relations with the contractor. We're at the top. We're not affected, so we can be
You're
the
not super
squeaky well.
adjacent, yeah.
They're not affecting our property.
Okay, we did get notices this week that they're gonna do the secondary water metering on our block right away, so.
They're really good at it now. They're really efficient. They vacuum it all out, clean it
Oh.
up nice, and away they go.
One thing is if you were one of the few like we were and volunteered to have it done before, you have to run them down and tell them it's already been done or they'll dig up your yard again.
Oh, really?
They tried 3 times to dig up our yard and we had to run down, it's already in there, look, it's already in there. Because made a mess in our garden. So just if you've already got one,
Wow.
put some big sign and some big thing and let the contractor know that there's already a meter in there. You don't have to dig again.
Okay, I don't have anything else. Anyone else that you wanna bring up? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Hey, everybody sit still. Mary, would you please take our picture? Here's my camera.
You wanna stand up and get closer together?
Oh, this looks good.
I like this
Both.
because,
This
let's
was
do
very
both,
efficient.
but this looks,
No,
here we are with our,
This way, 20 years from now, she can zoom in on the names and see who
yeah,
we
and say
are.
who's who.
When she forgets.
Yeah, send me
I'll,
some.
That's okay.
I'll text it to you guys.
Okay, but
But,
here
you
you
know,
go.
these are things you need to document.
Not my phone.
Okay.
They'll make it look like you're important. We're
Best
important now.
behavior.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's fun to have that for your life
Yeah.
history.
Right.
When you're running for governor next time,
Yeah,
say,
that's
look,
right, that's
you
right.
could use that as a picture.
Hey, we look good.